So this is a video about a really interesting comment I just read. Something so interesting that it really wants me to ask the person more about what they were thinking when they said it. But unfortunately, when the quote comes from the daughter of a newspaper columnist, there's not much I can do to actually ask them. So the next best thing is to think about what they might have been thinking instead. So here's the source of the quote, an article called Big Pandemic Feelings by Emily Flake in the New York Times. And here she is quoting her 7-year-old daughter saying, "Please, Mama, I need to go to school. I need to. School is what makes me me." And this really puzzled me. How can school make you who you are? How does that bit of your identity building work? Before I go on to tell you some of my thoughts about that, I have to say something else about the article. The teacher in me can't move on. It's almost like an itch. The summary sentence for the article is, my kid is asking existential questions I'm not equipped to answer. And later on we have this reference to putting together a soothing platitude. And there's generally a sense in the article that this is a problem when you just don't know how to answer these big questions. Now, my entire approach to teaching is based on the idea that you don't need to have the answers. You just need to have the questions. And in case that sounds a bit spooky and out there and overwhelming or really tricky, actually you can get a long way with just 3. Never underestimate the ability of a good thinking noise, particularly when matched with a good listening expression. That's an interesting question. What do you think? And probably my favourite, and the one I would use here, and kudos to the Visible Thinking Project for putting me onto this one. What makes you say that? Now, as I can't ask that one in this question, what I'm instead thinking about is, why might you have said that? To give a bit of context for this, I've just been thinking about the text I want to include for the Island of Listening video that I'm about to put up. And towards the end, it includes what I think of as the proclamation of Ruth. I am Ruth. I don't fit inside any of the identity boxes created by neurotypicals. I want to think like a Ruth, feel like a Ruth, live like a Ruth, be a Ruth. If you want to talk to someone who conversations like a neurotypical, thinks like a neurotypical, feels like a neurotypical, go talk to someone who is a neurotypical and leave me alone because I don't want to talk to you. This, to me, is a very powerful identity statement. And it's an identity statement that's saying, screaming really, identity is created internally. I'm going to figure this out for myself. And so the idea that this young girl was expressing, that identity was being created by school, really conflicted that. And it made me think maybe I've only got part of the picture. Do I have these experiences of external factors creating my identity too? So I tried to think of some experiences where I might have expressed something at least similar to what this is saying. And the first one that came to mind was the maths camp I went to as, first of all, a student at the end of year 11 and again at the end of year 12, and then returned to as a tutor, maybe 5 years. And Nemesis, or the National Maths Summer School, is maths taught through curiosity. It first of all shaped everything I understood about what it meant to learn maths and the joy that came through it. And later, it shaped everything that I think about teaching. If you like, my entire career and research interest is based around the idea, how can we do nemesis for everything? But even with this huge level of influence over how I think about maths, teaching, learning, community, so many different things. Nemesis is never, or has never been, what makes me me. With the benefit of hindsight, and this is a lot because I was 16 at the time and I'm a bit older now, I could have said Nemesis is making me what I will become. But let's get real. There was no way I was going to say that at the time. The best I come up with then is this is the best 2 weeks of my life. The other thing that comes to mind here is PAL, which is the program I was coordinator of from 2011 to 2014. And one of the things we spent a lot of time thinking about is the question, what is PAL? And I'm not going to try and give you an answer there because we never came up with one. But for now, I think I'll just describe it as a plan to change the world by helping teachers get really good at helping students become more effective learners. And in trying to put that plan into action, I learned so much about myself. And I think the people involved in the program learned a lot about themselves as well. But does it make me me? And to an extent, I've had a lot of time to think about this question, and I won't go into it in too much detail, other than to say I do know what it's like to have something, this identity forming, ripped away from you. But looking back, I think the key insight for me in terms of moving on is recognizing that PAL isn't what makes me me. I think what I can say is I didn't know what made me me until I saw it reflected back at me through PAL. But that's an insight that I can keep with me forever. I don't need PAL to be the ongoing source of that part of my identity. So these are two experiences that I can think about to maybe get a sense of what she might have been saying. But having thought about them, it really just throws me back to the question I have at the beginning. I'd really love to be able to ask her because it's such an interesting statement.